What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the Whiskey Shed. I hope you're all doing well. My name is John McGrath. I'm just an Irishman in his workshop, taking a sojourn through the world of whiskey and sharing that with you guys. Now, this is the first bottle of Scotch that I featured on this channel. It's predominantly an Irish whiskey channel, but we can't do whiskey without taking a little stroll over to Scotland and checking out what they're doing over there. So this is the first Scotch, like I said, that I've had on this channel. It's a 15-year-old single malt from Glenfiddich. So let's jump in and have a look. Okay, so a little bit about the whiskey before we jump in and nose and taste it. Now, I'm not going to get into the history, even though there's a lot of history with this bottle of whiskey. Once I get outside of Ireland, I'm on pretty shaky ground, but a little bit of history. So Glenfiddich, it was founded by William Grant in 1876, and the name Glenfiddich, Scottish Gaelic for the Glen of the Deer. I suppose in Irish that would be Glenfia or Glanfia. So the languages are quite similar, although they're not the same language. It's a 15-year-old single malt. It's a Speyside Scotch. So there's regions to Scotch whiskey. I'm sure most of you guys will know this watching. Maybe some of you guys don't. And this is a Speyside, so it's broken up into the Highlands, the Lowlands, Speyside, Islay, the Islands, and Campbelltown. And they all kind of have their own unique flavour. Even though there's multiple flavours of whiskies within all the regions themselves, they're all kind of known, I suppose, for one specific style. And Speyside is kind of sweet single malts, sweet unpeated single malts, and that is definitely what this whiskey is. So like I said, it's the 15-year-old. Now, why did I buy this bottle? Not going to do a history story, but why did I buy the bottle? I was up in Northern Ireland on a few days holidays in the lovely town of Enniskillen. I saw this for £40 sterling, which I thought was an absolute bargain because we get ripped off for whiskey in the Republic of Ireland. So that's about 46, 48 euros. I would pay 65 to 70 euros on the other side of the border in the Republic. So I said, what an opportunity to get a 15-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey for 40 quid. I didn't want to pass up that opportunity, so I grabbed a bottle. So we'll do our first bottle of Scotch on this channel. So let's get in with the nosing and tasting. Like I said, not too much history, just a little bit about it. Let's do it. Okay, so let's get this in the glass. You know, let's get a little cork pop. Not too bad. Okay, so we have some Scotch in our Irish whiskey glass. Now, a little bit about this whiskey that's actually in the bottle before we nose and taste this. So like I said, it's the Glenfiddich, it's the 15-year-old, so it's an age statement, 15-year-old, 40% ABV, so 80 proof. It's aged in virgin oak, bourbon barrels, and Portuguese sherry casks, and they also put it all into their big Solera vat. Now, what's a big Solera vat? Well, you take all those barrels after 15 years, you put them in a big vat, and you let that all integrate and mingle and settle down till everything is nice and diffused and dispersed and all that whiskey is well and truly integrated, and then you never empty that vat more than 50%. So when you're filling your bottles from that vat, you keep it down to about halfway, and then you dump in the next lot of 15-year-old in on top of that, and it's kind of a way of keeping the bottles consistent over the years. You always have some of the previous, I suppose, distillation and aged whiskey in that vat, and you're constantly just topping it up. It's like an infinity bottle for all the world. You're just topping it up and keeping the flavour profile the exact same. So that's essentially the Solera vat. So on the nose. So it's definitely sweet. Again, Speyside, like I said, is known for its sweet single malts. This is definitely a sweet whiskey, but it's also sour. So the main two notes I get from this are sweet and sour. A little bit of honeyed sweetness. I'm also getting a little hint of the sherry, so you can get some of the dried fruits. And it just has a sour, malty note is what I'm getting from it. Now, it's not offensive or it's not a bad note. It's just a sweet and sour whiskey. So that's kind of the two main dominant notes to it. Now, there's also something a little bit, I'd say, aggressive in this whiskey. It has a little bit of a fizz to it. That's the best way I can describe it. It's like something is just not integrated. There's something just a little aggressive to it. That's the way I find it. It's a little punch on the nose. It also has a punch on the palate, but I'll get to that now in a second. So on the nose, sweet and sour up front, maybe a little woody note. I definitely get some of the dried fruits from the sherry cask influence. A bit of spice there, possibly a little bit of cloves maybe. But all in all, pretty nice. Sweet and sour are the main two dominant notes, and there's a little bit of aggressiveness to it too. So on the palate. So on the palate, again, it's sweet and sour for me. It's maybe honeyed sweetness up front. Definitely maybe some of those bourbon barrel influences are in there. A little bit of dried fruits. And there's kind of an apple sour, those apple sour kind of candied sweets on the mid palate. Finishes with a little bit of licorice, but it has a sting. There's a bit of a kick to this whiskey. It's only 40%, but something in here has not integrated. That's how I would put it. It has a bit of a punch to it. I've given this drop to a couple of people and they've all kind of said the same thing to me. There's a bit of a kick to that whiskey. It's a bit of a sting to it. And I definitely get the same thing. There's a lovely flavour profile, but something in here is just a little bit aggressive, maybe a little bit angry, a little bit not integrated. That's what I'm getting from it. So yeah, now I'll get into it a little bit more in a minute of why this bottle of whiskey is probably €40 for a 15-year-old single malt. It's one of the biggest, I suppose, producers of whiskey in Scotland, Glenfiddich, or certainly one of the biggest in the Speyside region. And they're able to pump out a 15-year-old single malt for 40 quid. So maybe my expectations on this whiskey weren't set quite right when I bought it. I was thinking 15-year-old single malt Scotch, this is going to be fantastic, but it's kind of more of a, I suppose, a mass-produced 15-year-old single malt, if you kind of get where I'm coming from. So let's let it sit on its side for about 10 minutes, let it open up, let's see if it settles down a little bit. We'll come back and see what else we can get out of this whiskey. Okay, so we've let it sit for 10 minutes. Now, if you let whiskey sit in the glass, it certainly does change. And sometimes really nice whiskies really change. Sometimes the cheaper end of whiskies don't change so much. So let's see what this is like now. Still sweet, still sour. Bit more honeyed sweetness on the nose, maybe toffee. I think that's that bourbon barrel influence. I can pick it out just a little bit more now. Kind of a nice floral note is also in there. So there's a lot going on with this whiskey. But the two main overriding themes, I think, is that sweet and sour, as I had said before. So the sweet end of things definitely comes from honey, toffee, that end of things. Then you have the kind of sour, malty note. They're the two dominant ones. And then there's a little bit of licorice, possibly some cloves. It has a slight spiciness to it with those dried fruits. A lot going on with it. You can pick it all out. But then there is that a little aggressive note, but it has kind of calms down a lot. So maybe it's definitely one of those whiskies, pour, leave it sit for 10 minutes, then come back to it. Maybe a drop of water, maybe on the rocks might be the way you might like it. I like my whiskey neat, so that's why I taste all my whiskey just like this. But yeah, there we go. On the nose, not too bad. So on the palate, again, it's calmed down a small bit now. It has calmed down, but there's still that sting. It still has a bit of a burn and a sting to it, a little punchiness. But again, it's a nice sweet and sour note. That's what I'm getting from this. Honey, possibly toffee now. Again, those apple sours are still kind of there in the mid palate. It has that little bit of kick to it, but it's calmed down now. It's not nearly what it was when I first poured it into the glass. So definitely one to let sit, I think. But yeah, maybe a little hint of the dried fruits now as well. It's not overly complex, I wouldn't say. Lingers with that little licorice, maybe a touch of cloves on the back of it there, slight spiciness. But yeah, all in all, not too bad. Now, what would I say about this whiskey? I think set your expectations going into this. I didn't. I was a bit excited when I saw a 15-year-old bottle of Scotch single malt, and for only 40 quid, I thought I'm in here. But they can produce a lot of this stuff for that kind of money. So if you kind of set your expectations to that, you will be pleasantly surprised, I think. Let it sit for a bit, maybe a drop of water. That's how I'd advise you take it, but whatever way you like it is how you should drink it. And yeah, it's not bad. I would recommend it, especially if you can pick it up for around £40 sterling. It's quite nice indeed. So yeah, that's the first Scotch on the channel. Not too bad indeed. Okay guys, so there you go. That has been my opinion on Glenfiddich, the Solera 15-year-old single malt from Speyside region of Scottish whiskey. It's the first Scotch on the channel. It's not bad. It's not going to blow your socks off. Like I said, if you think you're getting a really, you see 15-year-old single malt on the bottle and your expectations get too high, just lower those expectations a small bit. Know that this is kind of produced in large quantities, but it's amazing that they can actually get this stuff out 15 years of age for that price range. I think that's fantastic. I think it's priced exactly right, and if you set your expectations to the price level, then you will have a nice whiskey indeed. And don't put too much expectations on it, I suppose, is the thing that I would say about this. But quite nice. Definitely pick it up if you see it for £40. If you get it for around 46, 48 euros, then yeah, it's a pretty good whiskey indeed. Not the greatest whiskey I've ever tasted, but yeah, I'm definitely going to do some more Scotch on the channel. So definitely let me know in the comments what's your favourite bottle of Scotch. I definitely want to get into some more of the peated stuff, so we might get out around the Islay region as well. There's some interesting flavours certainly going on around there that are quite unique. I would say the Speyside region, certainly what I've tasted, Some Irish whiskies would be quite similar to this. Dare I say it? I've maybe committed some blasphemy there, but yeah, it's not too dissimilar. You would definitely know it's not Irish whiskey, but some of the flavour profiles are not too dissimilar. But yeah, a little kind of angry, aggressive something inside in this whiskey is what I would say to you. So that's it, guys. For what it's worth, that's my opinion on Glenfiddich 15. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up if you had. Any comments, any questions, leave them below. And like I said, let me know what's your favourite bottle of Scotch. I'm definitely going to take a sojourn around Scottish whiskey as well. So that's it, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Sláinte your Macora. Take it easy. And yeah, Scotch whiskey, not too bad. Sweet and sour. That's the two kind of overriding notes in this whiskey. Quite nice, but set your expectations.